Hello everyone, this is Easy Natural English with Liam. So as usual, I'll be speaking to you in natural English that is a bit easier. And today I wanted to talk a bit about the most expensive cities in the world. But before I get started, because this is a YouTube channel and a podcast, I just want to say to the people who are listening to the podcast that recently I put a new video on YouTube introducing phrases that you can use when you're thinking in English, because a lot of my students say things like how to say when they're thinking, and that is not correct. So check out the YouTube so you can catch those phrases. But anyway, today, we're talking about the most expensive cities. And this is something that is a bit hard to calculate, I realize. So I've got my computer here and I was looking at lists of the most, top 10 expensive cities and, titles like that. I see that each website is different. But there are a lot of cities that come up in all of the lists, but some of them are a bit surprising. Like I looked at one list and it said that Lagos in Nigeria is more expensive than the UK, than London in the UK, which I realize, doesn't make much sense. But then when I looked at how they calculated this, they said that they were buying a selection of goods and looking at the price. But the goods were like blue jeans, hamburgers, and a bottle of Heineken were three of the items. And something like Heineken is, in America is, or in the UK, is a pretty standard product, so it's not too expensive. But if you buy Heineken, I know if you buy Heineken here in Japan, it's expensive because it's an import good. If you buy Japanese beer, it'll be much cheaper. And I'm guessing it's the same in Nigeria. If you buy a local beer, it's probably going to be much, much cheaper than a bottle of Heineken. So I think sometimes the way people are calculating these lists are not the best way. Perhaps there's a better way to do it. So I found a list on Wikipedia, which they actually called the costliest cities in the world. So, costly is just another way to say expensive. And they looked at 160 different products and services. So, they were calculating the price from a much bigger range of products. I don't know exactly what, but let's have a look what's on their list. So in number 10, so the 10th most expensive city, they've got Denmark. And I'm not surprised that this is on the list because I have been to Denmark and I can confirm that it was very expensive. At that time, I was living in Spain, in Valencia. And Valencia is a pretty cheap city compared to a lot of other cities. For example, a cup of coffee, like kind of in a normal Spanish cafe, is about, maximum €1.50 maybe for just a small black coffee. And even a place close to my work, which was a little bit outside of the city, I could buy a coffee for 80 euro cents. So for 80 cents as in euro cents, which is less than a euro, which, if you're talking like dollars, that's probably about $1 or something. So very cheap. But when I went to Denmark, the average price of a coffee, the average price in Copenhagen was, what was it? About 4 euros or something. So, Copenhagen. Actually, I think earlier I just said Denmark by mistake when I meant Copenhagen. So, Copenhagen in Denmark. So, Copenhagen, is a very expensive city. My wife and I were living in Valencia, and that time we were not married. And actually, we went to Copenhagen to get married because it's a very easy process in Denmark. It was much easier than Spain. So we went to Denmark just for 1 week, to Copenhagen for 1 weekend. When we came back to Spain, looked at our bank accounts, we were like, oh my God, we spent like all our money in Copenhagen in just a few days. So yes, Copenhagen is a very expensive city. And then number 9, so the 9th most expensive city on here is Los Angeles. I haven't been to Los Angeles, but I think a lot of like famous people live there, a lot of celebrities and stuff. But I think Los Angeles, probably like a lot of these cities, can be very varied, especially in a place like America, in the United States. There is a huge gap between the rich and the poor. So, I think in Los Angeles, you can probably buy really, really expensive things. Like, for example, if you go for a meal in a restaurant, you can probably go and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars, probably more than $1,000 in some restaurants. But also in Los Angeles, there are a lot of a lot of ghettos, a lot of poor neighborhoods where you can probably buy food for much, much cheaper. So I think there's going to be different standards of living in a city like Los Angeles. But it says number 9 most expensive on here. The 8th most expensive city is Geneva in Switzerland. It's another place I haven't been to, but I'm not surprised because I think there's a lot of political stuff that goes on in Geneva, like United Nations, working from Geneva a lot. Yeah, a lot of sort of diplomats and stuff going through there, and Switzerland is an expensive country in general. So, yeah, Geneva is there in number 8. Number 7 is another American city. So 7th place is New York. And I have been to New York. And kind of similar to what I was saying about Los Angeles, again, I think New York, if you're in Manhattan, you can spend a lot of money, but also New York is a big city with a lot of variety and, very varied level of wealth, very varied level of, like the amount of money that people have. So when I was in New York, I went to some cafes that were like, very trendy cafe in a kind of a nice neighborhood. And that sometimes I think, it's a bit expensive, like a cup of coffee could be like $4 or $5 or something. But then if you go to some other neighborhoods, especially like, for example, I'd went to some kind of Latin American neighborhoods where usually people are not earning so much money. And I could get, like a whole plate of Mexican food, like some really nice tacos and things would be like $5 or something for a huge plate of food. So again, it can be like really varied in big cities like that, I think. But yeah, in general, New York, pretty expensive. So where are we here? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 6 is Tel Aviv in Israel. Also a place I haven't been to, and I don't know much about it, to be honest, but I have heard that the cost of living is pretty high. I don't really know much about Tel Aviv. Number 5, Osaka in Japan. And I do know a bit about Osaka because I lived there for some time, but I'm surprised to see Osaka on the list. And actually, Tokyo is not on this list. So this says top 10 most expensive cities. And Osaka is on there. And Tokyo is not on there. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I think it depends on what metric you use, how you measure this. Because I lived in Tokyo and Osaka. And I found life in Osaka to be much cheaper in Tokyo, in my experience. So, it sort of depends how you're measuring things. When I look at the apartments, for example, in Osaka, I had a very central apartment. It was very close to the center of the city, very close to a train station, very convenient neighborhood. And my apartment had 2 big rooms and a kitchen and bathroom and toilet and a balcony. And the cost was the same as in Tokyo when I lived in a place with 1 small room, 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, 1 toilet, and a balcony. And my apartment in Tokyo was also much older and not so nice. So the one in Osaka was nicer and bigger, and it was the same price. And about the same distance from the city. Actually, my one in Osaka might have even been closer to the city center. And yeah, and cost of food and things like that. Sometimes in Osaka, I used to go into little cafes and be able to buy coffee for like 100 yen. Close to my work, there was a place that had a coffee, like to run. There's 2 old ladies that ran this cafe, and it was 100 yen for a cup of coffee. Whereas in Tokyo, that's pretty much impossible unless you go to a chain cafe like Dotor. But like, yeah, in a little independent cafe, I've never seen that in Tokyo. So yeah, I think, like I said, in my experience, Osaka was much cheaper. Food and things as well. But yeah, by these people's measurement, Osaka apparently is more expensive. So then number 4 on here, no surprise, Singapore. I think a lot of people kind of know about Singapore being expensive. I've been to Singapore. It seemed pretty expensive to me. To be honest, it didn't seem like crazy expensive, like compared to London or something, but it's on this list, and London is not on this list, this top 10 expensive cities here on Wikipedia. But yeah, Singapore is, I thought Singapore was kind of a similar price to New Zealand, to be honest, like to Auckland in New Zealand, but yeah, apparently this list says it's more expensive than London. Then number 3 is another Swiss city. It's another city in Switzerland, and that's Zurich. Again, I haven't been to Switzerland, so I don't know much about Zurich, but no surprises because Switzerland seems like an expensive country. Number 2 is Hong Kong, which again is, I can imagine that Hong Kong is a bit expensive compared to other parts of Asia, for example, but I'm kind of surprised that Hong Kong is on this list when London is not on this list. Because I'm from the UK, so I've been to London. I feel like London is the most expensive place I've ever been, to be honest. Like public transport in London costs a lot of money. Like to take one small trip can cost on the train can cost like £4, which is like $5-6. It's really expensive to get around in London. Food is really expensive in London. Just a small sandwich can cost you again like £4-5. £4-5. Yeah, and I know apartments in London are crazy. People living in London can pay £600 just to share an apartment with somebody else. So just to have a room and you're sharing with like 3 other people, the rest of the apartment or the house. And you can pay like more than £600, which is, like $800 or something. It's very expensive. So I don't know why London is not on this list, but something like Hong Kong is. Because I know a lot of people like to go to Hong Kong to go shopping. Like when I lived in Australia and New Zealand, a lot of people would go to Hong Kong to buy clothes and technology, like electronics and things, because they would be cheaper. So I don't know what kind of services they're measuring here that makes them think that Hong Kong is more expensive. But anyway, number 1 on this list is Paris in France. I've spent quite a lot of time in Paris, a few months in Paris. I've been there a few times. And yeah, it's pretty expensive. If you go to the kind of tourist areas, then it's very expensive. I guess like any touristic place is very expensive. Tourists just spend crazy amounts of money on things, so the local people keep putting the prices higher and higher. But I also have a lot of friends that live in Paris, and when I go to their neighborhoods, which are not right in the center, they're a bit out of Paris. When I go to their neighborhoods, it's actually pretty cheap in some neighborhoods. So again, like I was saying about New York and Los Angeles and these other big cities, perhaps it kind of depends where you are, where you're buying these things, because the price can be so different. Even earlier I was talking about London. London is also the same. Even if you go into a chain shop, I remember when I was in London before, I went into an H&M, which is a big clothing franchise, a clothing chain. And they had the plain t-shirts. I think at that time there was a long time ago, they cost about £3 for a plain t-shirt. But then if you took a train and I went to another area, same shop, same t-shirt was now like £3.20 or something like that. They added like a little bit, maybe because their rent price was higher over there. So even within a chain place, the price can change from one neighborhood to another. So anyway, that today was a bit about the most expensive cities in the world according to Wikipedia. But yeah, it sort of depends where you're looking. Anyway, an interesting topic. Let me know in the comments on YouTube what you think about this. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you're on the podcast, don't forget to follow. See you all back here next time.